All right, so we're going to look at the placements of Kim Zolciak Bierman and Kroy Bierman. If you are in any way a Real Housewives fan, you know who Kim is. She originally started out, that's how most people know her, it's from the Real Housewives of Atlanta, over 10 years ago at this point. She started on that show, and then a couple years later, she had her own reality show with Kroy and also her children. And Kim has two daughters that are now adults, and I believe she has two children with Kroy. Kroy is a former NFL player. And when we first met Kim on the Real Housewives of Atlanta, she had a relationship with this man named Big Papa. That was a nickname, of course. He was anonymous. We didn't really see his face or what he looked like. There were rumors that he was a married man. Kim is known for her extravagant, taste. She's known for her lifestyle. She's known for being rather, her demeanor, her personality, rather direct type of woman. I think that also speaks to that Mercury and Taurus type of energy we're going to talk about. But also she's known for her wigs, her appearance, things like that. And so the sun being in Taurus, it does not mean every Taurus person is going to be consuming material things. But she also has Leo in her chart. And though Leo and Taurus are square signs, they both like nice things. Taurus likes things of value. So you might see a Taurus person who's very into, oh, look at what I have. Look at this type of car. It's a this brand. Look at this exquisite taste I have. Whereas with Leo energy, when you get the people who are into items, it's flashy. It's look at this. This is what's popular. This is what's cutting edge. So they have spent a lot of money on this house that they have, and then their house apparently went into foreclosure. That was what was happening for a couple of months, which they were talking about, like the house, issue. Then it comes out that they're about to get divorced, and then there's a lot of drama between the kids and money, and he's accusing her of taking money or stealing from their organization or whatever business they have. And then you hear that they're trying to make it back and get back together. Then recently you hear there's another, there's a body cam footage of them arguing when the police were called. So it's a lot going on with this couple, okay? And obviously, if we pull up their transits, we could probably get an idea of what's happening right now, especially with that Venus being retrograde in Leo. Kroy is really going to be, I think, the most affected by all these different things happening. So the Sun and Taurus person, not surprised, 20th degree. I bet she does a lot of these things because of her family or this desire to feel fulfilled. This money fulfills Kim in some way, shape, or form based on the astrology. Okay, I would say based on the astrology. That's what we see. I do work with degrees. I have a video on my main channel where I talk about degrees, where I adapted from, who came up with the original degree system, and how I use it. So I do have a video on sun degrees, and you can apply that to other ones. But the 28 is a Cancer-like degree, which is going to be about fulfillment, togetherness. So part of her is afraid for her family, most likely, with this. She doesn't want, it's like a part of her is likely, like, she doesn't want to get divorced, most likely because of the fear of, what do I do? Like, what foundation am I going to have next, right? She does seem to be a woman that typically needs a partner. She's a moon in Libra. I'm sorry, moon in Libra. I'm not at all saying that's what all moon in Libras are, but her moon is conjunct Pluto. Okay, so there's attachment types of energies here. The moon in Libra, as we know, appreciates partnership in an emotional way. It's not just a surface level way. It is literally an emotional need, and in some ways it could be beautiful, especially when a person really values their partner, but it also can lead to some codependent issues. Again, because I don't know the birth time, I do not have the exact degree for her moon. But other thing that stood out when looking up her past is she had an affair with the police sergeant when she was 17. Which this was, this would have been, I don't know what the age of consent is, but that would have been, illegal in some states. But and the officer got fired. So like, what would make, like, why does Kim have like all these things attached to her in terms of just like her partnerships? It's like, well, look at this. The fact that her moon sextiling Saturn, attracting people who have power, attracting people who are of status, attracting, even with the moon, if you look at the moon, depending on what the degree is, even if the moon doesn't have a strong sextile to Mars, attracting people who in some way have something that they have something to offer. Mars and Leo. I think I talked about this with the video I just did with about Larsa Pippen. Mars and Leo women like men who have something to offer. They like men who are courageous, who are entertaining, who do kind of make it a flashy type of energy. You could have some women who are like Mars and Leo women who obviously women who date men could also be like a creative man, a man who is in the arts or performance or something like that. But he has to have something that kind of draws. Oh, look at him. He's important, right? Plus, her Mars is conjunct Saturn. The desire and need to feel important. Now, as we can see here, Venus is in Gemini. Not surprising. Venus in Gemini, as I said before, just like how Venus in Capricorn can be an energy that is aligned with um, dating someone older, Venus and Gemini can represent dating someone younger. Gemini is very youthful energy. And again, Larsa Pippen also had a similar chart. Not completely, but she had Venus and Gemini. As you can see, Kroy and Kim, there is an age difference. Almost 7 years. It's not that big, but there is an age difference factor going on there. Uranus being in Scorpio, retrograde. Remember, Scorpio energy is about resources. It can be about gaining. It's about obtaining. It's about secrets. So even though Uranus is actually considered to be exalted when it is in the sign of Scorpio, which means it actually works well, surprisingly, right? Because what Uranus does is Uranus disrupts, and we know Scorpio is kind of thrives on some level of power, consumption, some level of transforming something. So it's not surprising if she is someone who does kind of like unusual or strange things, like in terms of like how she moves money around, being very like, nope, we're going to try this, we're going to do that, being very spontaneous in terms of how she acquires money, how she uses money, how she utilizes it. But also at the same time, we look at the chart, we have to understand the fact that what else is going on here is if we see that Neptune is in Sagittarius for her, we also can sometimes see disassociation when we look at Neptune. We also see that he is Neptune in Capricorn. So they have a different set of reality. So I'm going to jump into him. He's a Virgo stellium. Okay, he is a Virgo stellium. He has a Leo moon, and he's a Venus in Leo. So when we look at his energy, the first thing we can notice here is that with all this focus here, it's almost like his chart shows that there is more expectations on how things have to be done in a very specific way. She wants the comfort. She wants the things. She wants the things that she know are actually going to be that she can show. He probably is more a little bit more practical sometimes in terms of how do you spend the money? What do you do? But he's equally the problem with this money situation with the Venus and Leo. Why? Well, Venus and Leo sometimes can spend. Venus and Leo sometimes isn't looking at what they have to lose. What is saving him is that he has Virgo energy. So I think that he enjoys the lifestyle they have as well, but his Virgo energy probably makes him want to be a little bit more like very deliberate, very detail oriented about things. What are we doing with the money? How are we making sure that we can sustain this? How are we making sure that we can afford this? Because even when we look at her Mercury in Taurus, you would say, well, Mercury in Taurus person is very practical. What I do see about her is Kim likes to sing, right? I'm not saying she made it as a singer, but Taurus is known for singing. But I would say with her voice, her way she talks, the way she delivers her information, Kim is very direct. Like Kim is very direct. She doesn't cut around the bush type of woman with the fourth degree. It's a Cancer type of degree. I think what she says is what she means, right? And she does have a way of influencing people. Like what she says kind of spreads to other people. Even when you would see her on TV and be like, oh, she said that to that person like that. But she has a way in which people in her life probably respond well. She also, obviously she has Mercury, which is sextile in Jupiter, and Jupiter's in Cancer, which means she probably, has a way with words in a way that helps other people feel connected to her. Again, all we see from the person is what they choose to show us on, the internet. There's a lot going on here, right? Because we also could look at the fact that, wait a minute, their Saturn placements square each other. Saturn is about long term, long haul. How are you for the long haul? Saturn is in detriment when it's in Leo because Saturn is the original traditional ruler of Aquarius. So Saturn and Leo sometimes can be a placement that struggles because it is trying to use the discipline of Saturn, but Leo is about shine. And sometimes Leo doesn't always understand the importance of process and patience and the process of having to sometimes meet the goal, work towards things, right? That's Capricorn. It's like I'm working towards this goal that I had. Leo energy could be sometimes like, I am great. I am good at this. I deserve this. Look at what I have to offer. And there's nothing wrong with that sometimes, but it is going to mean that there's a difference in how they approach long-term goals. Saturn, Scorpio, he's way more methodical. He's likely way more cautious, right? He also has Pluto in Scorpio. He has a South Node in Scorpio. So, when we look at his energy, the Scorpio energy is concentrated in terms of how he is applying that to building, to growing, to allowing something to become more powerful, to gain momentum over time. Mars is momentum, Pluto is over time. But she has Uranus in Scorpio, but it means that they're going to have vastly different ways in how they approach things of gain. Both in the marriage may want more resources, want to gain, want to have that power, want to have that control. Now, I do think that when it comes to moves, in terms of getting lawyers, I think Kroy's chart shows he's a little bit more strategic than Kim. Kim might, be a little bit more emotive, responsive. She also has Mars. Let's see, she's Mars and fire sign. Mars is trining Neptune. Okay. Sometimes she moves in a way that is based on her desires, her dreams. And that could be good sometimes, but it also can be, fire can be impulsive. Whereas when we look here at his chart, Mars in Virgo is very much like, I'm thinking before I do a move. All right. Like he's probably the one in the relationship that has the receipts. He has, right? He has the receipts. He has everything that he needs to, like, hey, like if we're getting a divorce, I have this receipt. I have this paper. I have that. So it is something that I think could be something that stands out about this relationship. Also, when we look at the fact that his moon, now again, we don't have his exact birth time, so we don't know the exact placement, but looking at the moon conjunct Venus, I think for a while, Kim has in this relationship seemed to sometimes wear the pants. She sometimes is a little bit more directive. She is a little bit more do things my way, right? And again, this is not me saying there aren't some good things between them in a relationship. Most relationships, even if we disagree with them, I'm not saying I disagree or not. I'm very, very neutral about this situation. I don't, have any stock in this situation. Hopefully they can work out whatever they need to work out for the children. But when you look at this relationship, you do kind of see that there is some like kind of dominant energy with her in terms of what she wants, right? Because then when we look at dominance, we're going to look at the Mars conjunct Saturn, right? So then she could be a little bit bossy sometimes. Moon is conjunct Pluto. So, or, depending on the degree of the moon. But let's say it was, either way, they're in the same sign, right? The moon conjunct Pluto can bring about like a person whose emotions kind of control a lot of different things around them, right? It's like because she feels so strongly about something, again, it will depend on what house her moon is in and house Pluto's in, but it could be a person who is so like, you never met someone that's like, it's my way or the highway because I feel so deeply about this. Not everybody has to feel deeply about this, right? And that could be like and then there's kind of there's a softness, right? There's this allure because it's like the moon in Libra is like, but I want peace. So at the end of the day, it's like she probably has been astrologically like she probably has highs and lows. She might be like really mad in a situation, and then when it all calms down, she's like, no, let's talk about this. I want peace. But also with the fact of her sun squaring Saturn. Sun squaring Saturn could also represent difficulty with a parent figure, parental figure, father. I know that there was an issue a couple years ago. Like I know her parents were on the show before and then got along. It seemed more so when she was raising the two daughters by herself. And then I know that her father got kicked out of their wedding or kicked something like that. So she might have some underlying issues as well with her parents. And some things that have unfolded in terms of like a lot of times people who felt stifled by their parents, when they get any type of control in their life, if it's in their charts, then they kind of sometimes inflict that on other people. Now, what you also will see here that I think is interesting about his chart, his North Node is in Taurus. Now, obviously, it's not conjunct her sun because the degrees are too far apart, but I do think that's an interesting thing to note is that his North Node, he is learning how to sustain. He is learning how, or should be learning, how to do things the simple way, not do things in the most complex way possible, right? He's coming into this world, most likely Scorpio, South Node, having had power in the past. That could be also why in this relationship, now he's showing his cards because things are at stake. You don't play around with Scorpio energy, right? Like if he has Pluto conjunct the South Node in a past situation, past life, there would have been like power moves. He was in charge of something. He had some level of responsibility in terms of like the harshness, dishing out punishments, things like that. Any of you who have Pluto conjunct South Node, that is a part perhaps of your past. But now it's like North Node in Taurus is learning how to get the same results they want, but do it in a simpler way, a cleaner way. Have the resources they need, build things up. And what's good for him is the fact that his sun is, yep. So we have this trine, the sun trining that the North Node. You know, using his Virgo energy to be really detail oriented, analytical about the things that he's diving into, so that way he can knows how to best simplify and streamline his life. And obviously with Kim, her North Node is in Libra. She's actually needs to learn partnership, fourth degree. She has to learn she has to learn how to piece things together and how to be emotionally open and available, right? And again, so this situation itself does not mean they're failing their North Nodes. We would have to see more evidence about their entire lives, right? But when we're looking at this relationship here, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing, yes, she has some power. There's some power dynamics here. There's a power type of dynamic that is at play. Even with look at him, like Venus squaring Saturn could also, if we're looking at like a relationship split, having a difficult relationship. Obviously, famous people break up and get together and get married and divorce all the time. Of course, there are some where they've just been having, a marriage for 20, 30 plus years. Venus square Saturn could definitely represent someone who has difficulty in romance. What's interesting is I see a lot. Venus square Saturn doesn't mean you won't get married or have a relationship. It sometimes means there's some type of break. Because what you value and what you want, Venus and Leo, he's likely drawn to Kim's dramatics. He's likely drawn. He kind of likes that type of energy. That kind of, she keeps me on my toes. She's very interesting, right? Virgos like to figure people out, right? And so for him, it can be quite entertaining to kind of watch Kim in action. Okay. But what we see here as well is that there can be difficulties in terms of keeping that long term, because Saturn and Scorpio eventually long term needs something that has a little bit more discipline, needs something like the things that he invests in Saturn and Scorpio are going to be things that can develop over time and that are carefully controlled. By control, I don't mean controlling her. I mean, it's like, all right, now we need to make sure I know that I'm investing. Scorpio energy is about investment. So Venus, that's why Venus and square Scorpio, Venus square Saturn folks can sometimes struggle and feel like, my relationship, my marriage, bad investment, right? That square. For her, what I see sometimes with people can be that, Pluto is in Libra, but it's in retrograde, right? And Pluto and Libra, Pluto and Libra is either energy that's really psychologically intelligent in terms of understanding the emotional nature of relationships, or Pluto and Libra is one that kind of can dissolve or disrupt their own relationships, self sabotage, so to speak. So that could be something that stands out in that regard. What also is interesting here, I do think like she's likely, again, objectively, Jupiter in Cancer likely her has a good relationship with her daughters. Likely is a mother that in some way, shape, or form does support her children. That does in some way make sure that they have what they need. In some way, shape, or like even though she's gone through all of this, she likely does center her kids, despite what we may think about the drama going on between them. And lastly, if we look here, the listing I would want to look at is their Junos. So let's see. Okay. So I wanted to look at these Junos, okay, the ideal partner. And what's interesting when we pull the chart up, his ideal partner is Libra. Now, again, Juno is not saying you have to date a Libra. It is Libra energy. Kroy needs to learn Libra energy. But the 22nd degree is about successful management of relationship. 22nd is about success, entrepreneurship. It is about the enterprise of something. So, with her having a Libra moon, there is a connection. He's learning something from Kim in particular. With Kim, we see her Juno is an Aquarius. She does best with she's going to learn best in a partnership where the person is a little bit more open to things that are outside of the realm of reality. She's going to do better when she learns someone who's a little bit more spontaneous, someone who is able to give her a level of adventure that she may be seeking and things that she may not always be able to experience. She likely is someone who can get bored if things aren't the way she wants them to be. I will say the benefits here, the positivity of their relationship is the Venus, Mars. I mean, there's definitely an attraction. Venus, both of their Venus, his Venus and Leo is conjunct her Mars and Leo. There's definitely likely an attraction there, even with Venus, making the aspect to her Saturn. So there's the conditions there for there to be some spark, some longevity in terms of their romance and their attraction to each other. But what we're seeing here unfold is a different way in which they are moving about in life. And I do think that transits are likely the things that are having this experience. Also, what I would say is just because two people are earth signs doesn't mean they have a perfect relationship. I mean, for all intents and purposes, within 9 degrees, that's kind of far, getting kind of far, but it's a trine. Taurus and Virgo trine. At their base, they understand each other. But what also is happening is that Taurus wants what it wants. And Taurus is sometimes gets really frustrated. Virgo overthinking it. Taurus will say, I already got what I need. I know what I want. That is it, right? It's that stubborn nature sometimes of Taurus that we need. And Virgo is, wait a minute. I don't know if we should sign that yet, Kim. I don't know. But then Kroy's still going along with it because he's got this Venus energy, right? And even if we don't look at Venus from the romance, the Venus and Leo, Leo, energy can be, it can be extravagant. It likes nice things. It likes beautiful things, kind of like Libra, but Leo likes what is new, hot, right? Venus, even when we look at Venus, the 18th degree, he second guesses some of the things that he likely purchases or buys, right? Because he understands the importance of money in a way that I would say probably astrologically, again, I don't know these people, you don't know these people, that Kim disagrees with, right? So there's where that difference comes into fray. So just because we see people, we're like, oh, earth sign, there's a difficulty here. When we look here, we do see that there's something that needs to be done in terms of their alignment, in terms of their goals, and what they are looking for in the future. Sometimes we look at future, Uranus is going to tell us what a person wants. That Uranus in Scorpio, she wants to make sure she can gain and retain what she has. Kim is likely always going to want the lifestyle she's had. She does not want to go backwards. Okay, we look at Uranus future. What does he want for the future? Uranus in Sagittarius, he just wants to make sure that he can have the world in which he's able to experience life in a way that gives him freedom. So if debt is going to help make him not be able to experience life, he doesn't want it. Whereas with Kim, it's like, I'm willing to do this at any any cost. And we do see that Kim does have more retrograde energy in her chart. She has more things likely karmically to work through. Retrogrades are not horrible beasts. Retrogrades help us tune in on a planet that needs a little bit of fixing. We didn't quite master that in the past life. Let's go back. It's going to require us to work a little bit more. It's kind of like, retaking a test, so to speak, in a way. So that's what I have to say about Kim and Kroy's charts and their alignment and their relationship. What I also find interesting here is her Juno is in Aquarius, and he has Jupiter in Aquarius. Jupiter is in retrograde, so he does have that one retrograde planet, but in 7th degree, right? I do think there's a connection here with most couples. Like when we pull up two people's charts, no matter what the news is saying, for the most part, people that are together, there's something drawing them together. And astrology can help us sometimes see what that thing is. So I do think it's interesting. And I do think that there's overlaps in this relationship, in this marriage. If it's worth saving, then they need to work through that. But also with Black Moon, Lilith is in Taurus, right? So there's some things to work through. There are some things that they have to do individually, even with her Jupiter conjunct her black moon in Cancer, it's like she's got some fears of not having enough. She has some fears. She emotionally attaches to things for maybe to replace something else that she didn't have in the past or that she feels she's lacking. So for Kip, there's some other things to do, and that's why I said with Kroy as well. There's some individual things that each person has to kind of work through. If they choose to work it out, their energy in their charts does show they have the ability to maintain a relationship, to maintain a long term marriage. But it again, like everything else in life, it's really going to depend on what they want and how they choose to proceed.